of the Economic Development Committee. Please take the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Shrine.
Here?
Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison is absent at the moment. Mr. Tooman.
Here.
Ms. Baker. Here. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any public comment related to the agenda items?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Okay, has everybody a chance to read the July 24th meeting minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve minutes?
The chair will second it. Is there any discussion?
No.
Okay, well, you can abstain if you like, and we still have a quorum. So we have a quorum to hold the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a vote affirmatively from the quorum that's present. The minutes have been approved. We have two matters before the committee. One, which is a follow-on from last meeting, but in the interest of, we have some guests here and folks from the Beacon Project. So rather than take them in the sequence, we're going to move that as our first item on the agenda. If you could please read 1039 into the record.
Resolution number 2017-0139, authorizing the Economic Development Fund place-based mixed-use loan in the amount not to exceed $2 million to 515 Euclid Avenue for the benefit of the Beacon Project.
Okay, is there somebody here to speak on this?
Yes, I'm Tony Stella with the Department of Development, and we have Ray Weiss here with Stark and Ryan Summers. And this project is a 19-story apartment building which is being erected on top of an existing parking garage on Euclid Avenue, corner of Euclid and East 6th, across the street from another project that we had done previously, which is the Garfield Building. This project is going to add 187 rental housing units downtown, much needed units. There's been a lot of demand for housing. It's a total project of about $88.7 million. There'll be 600 construction jobs and 92 total permanent jobs in the retail businesses and in the building management. So they're projecting about 150 new residents to downtown Cleveland, bringing new tax dollars downtown and creating more activity through being in walkable neighborhoods and attracting more young professionals into the city.
Okay, can you describe more a little about the documents themselves, the loan, where we are, our position, before we get the folks up here from Stark?
Yes, our loan is $2 million, and the law department has started working on some of the documents already. They've been taking a look at some of the documents which are going to be similar to a previous deal that we did. And we are going to be in a third lien position behind Huntington Bank and Cleveland Development Advisors. The Huntington Bank loan is $63.4 million, and Cleveland Development Advisors is a $5 million loan. It does meet our loan-to-value requirements of should be less than 90%, and we're at about 76.7% on the deal. And there'll be a personal guarantee from Robert Stark. And we'll be looking at doing a 7-year term with a 24-month interest-only period during the construction of the project. It's at a 3% loan.
It goes to 3% after the 5 years?
It's 3% throughout the term. So it's 3% interest only for 2 years, and then the remainder would be a principal and interest payments for the 5 years, based on a 25-year amortization.
Okay, so there's going to be a balloon at the end of the 5?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
and what happens from the balloon standpoint? Do we step out completely? Is that what we're envisioning?
Yes, we would be out altogether at that point. The deal would be refinanced.
Yeah, through the whole package is going to get refinanced at that point? Is that the intent?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, this deal.
Please put your name on the record. Sorry
Oh,
about
Sarah
that. We
Parks
know who you are,
Jackson.
but that's,
Sarah Parks
the
Jackson,
piece of paper
Department
doesn't
of
know.
Development,
Yeah.
Right. This deal is structured as we structured the other casino revenue projects that were downtown. This one came in at the tail end of our transitioning of the casino revenue fund, so that's why it's coming from the ED side instead of from the CD side, even though it is still a place-based project. We're very happy about the additional units, and as Anthony indicated, the building across the street, which is the Garfield Building, this body recommended and the council approved for $2 million in casino revenue funds, and we anticipate that structure opening very soon.
So this will, starting in, immediately, we'll start getting interest payments that'll be going back into the casino revenue fund for reinvestment in other projects then?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And
We are
then,
already receiving payments from the East Ohio Gas Building now for, that was the first one, the first ones we did, so those payments are coming in now.
okay, at some point, I'd like to get a detailed update, I'm sure the committee would, as to the status of where we are and on all of the entire flow of the monies going in and out of the casino revenue fund. Yes, questions look like Mrs. Baker has some. This is just on the financing. We've got.
Right. I guess
Start,
I would ask, is the economic development, are they a part of this? Do they oversee it? Is this part of their scope of work? Or no?
As far,
You referring to the department?
the,
The
oh,
department, I just,
Oh,
do they monitor the 2 million? Do they watch the project? Is this within their scope?
it is within our scope. We, from A to Z, keep up with the project. Anthony works closely with the law department and with the principals
Okay,
to make sure that the financing is current and up to date and I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
okay. I'm gonna pass right now, and I may come back, Chair.
questions on the financing? Okay, Mr. Miller?
My question is what the projected rate for a unit is and whether there's going to be any affordable housing included in this project.
this will be this is a market rate building. I don't believe there will be no affordable units in this building. This is a full market rate building. I believe the rates are just a bit over $2 per square foot, which is about the going rate for new construction downtown. It's pretty similar to what's being charged at Flats East Bank, and I believe the Garfield building will have similar rates.
And what's the typical square footage of a unit?
Maybe we can pick that, these are not the finance questions, unless you're looking to calculate the payments on that, Mr. Miller, we can ask those to Mr. Stark.
I'm willing to do it however you want. I figured the cost of the units and how the cash flow was
Okay.
gonna work related to the financing of the
Well,
project.
hopefully, we'll be able to ask those to the principals in regards to when they get up there and their cash flow payments in regards to any. how about,
Okay, that'll be fine.
Another questions on the payments and the terms of the loan itself, the structure of the loan?
I think so. Under the resolution, 100% from the Cuyahoga County Western Reserve Fund. So, I'm not as familiar with all the different funds that we use for economic development. And so how is this fund different than what we typically use for our economic development funds?
I believe this is the Western Reserve Fund is known also as the Job Creation Fund. So I believe it's the same fund that we use on all the deals out of the economic development side.
In the resolution, we just call it the Cuyahoga County Western Reserve Fund. Is that
Yes.
okay? Just follow up, the Huntington Bank and the Cleveland Development, what is it, advisory?
Cleveland Development Advisors, correct.
Is that, both of those are secured?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're really the last to finish the funding of this project?
Yes.
And one last, I'm sorry, third last. The personal guarantee, is that for the 2 million that is being asked from us today
Yes, correct. For our loan, yes.
for our loan? and I'm just asking, maybe for the safety of our loan, is the rest of it personally guaranteed, or is it just for the sake of today, our loan?
Yes, I believe they all have the same
Personal
personal
guarantee?
guarantee, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And getting back to the payments itself, obviously, we are not necessarily in a good place being in the news with what's going on. Tell me about the payment structure and how we're gonna see our monies flowing back to us. Is there a billing cycle? Do we have invoicing? Is all this set up for this account? Or one of the things that we had suggested at the last meeting was potentially just using the existing structure that was in place by the bank, for example, to go in and collect the money, and we would then take our proceeds directly from the bank. What's the structure as far as how we're gonna get paid?
So far, Mr. Chair, this structure has followed the structure as we already have established, and we've done that with the other casino revenue. So they go into our database portal, which is Portfo. They get an invoice, and it indicates that during the time of interest only, they'll get an invoice that indicates when the interest is due. And then once we get into a principal and interest, then they get another invoice or letter, if you will, that indicates that principal and interest is due. And then they would begin to pay when I think interest is quarterly and the principal and interest is monthly.
And what department is actually doing that? Is economic development gonna be doing that,
That's
or
still
is
the
it moved over to
department.
budget and finance?
No, that's still the Department of Development
Okay,
at
so
this time monitoring these loans.
Our system is all up to speed, and they're understanding that they're gonna see an invoice from the county, and they're gonna pay us, and we're gonna chalk that up on against the
That's
interest
correct.
payments. And
That's correct. To date, we haven't with the casino revenue, the larger casino revenue loans, and we have not had a problem.
Okay, and to Mrs. Baker's question about the Western Reserve Fund, gosh, I thought that we had dropped that name when the new county executive came in, and I thought he dropped that I thought we dropped that whole nomenclature. That was from the previous executive. I thought we had gone over to the job creation name, but perhaps it's still,
We can double check, and if this body so recommends us to move forward, make the changes with the clerk of council to ensure we have the correct name on all documents.
I don't recall this body recommending one or the other. I thought it was coming directly from the county executive that he had changed that name away from Western Reserve. So I think it, for clarity purposes, because we're gonna be filing, I assume, a secured mortgage against this in a third position, let's make sure we've got all the names correct. Of course, it's gonna be filed in the name of Cuyahoga County, I'm sure. The fund itself is probably not going to be part of the filing, but just at least so we can track the paperwork to make sure that the documentation agrees with it. So with that, does any of those questions result in anything else in regards to the financing budget? Okay, now let's hear about the deal and all the great things it's gonna mean for the city of Cleveland and all the new people that are gonna be living downtown, and then we can answer Mr. Miller's question. If in the course of answering the questions, Weiss, if you can maybe address Mr. Miller's comments about cash stream and things like that, that we're gonna be talking about square footage and flow and things of that nature.
My name is Raymond Weiss. I'm the CFO of Stark Enterprises.
And I'm Ryan Summers. I'm with Project Management Consultants and helping Stark with the financing of the project.
In regard to the project, they indicated 187 room apartment tower that's going to be built off of the existing structure. The existing structure is a parking garage that has 2 stories beneath ground, a first floor retail presence, and then 7-story garage above it. It's from that 7th floor above ground that we'll be building the apartment tower. The 187 units are a combination of 1 and 2 bedrooms. The 1 bedrooms, they range from a size of 111 square feet to 990 square feet for the 1 bedrooms, and the 2 bedrooms range from anywhere as small as 1,095 square feet. And there's one particular unit that's 1,959 square feet. On average, the average size is about 1,225 square feet per unit for the 187 units. The construction period, we're hoping to break ground in the second half of August. That's our targeted closing date. We have a consortium of banks that are providing the primary financing for the project. It'll be co-led by Huntington Bank and Key Bank locally, and as well as a third bank that we anticipate will be First Commonwealth. Those documents have, loan documents are well in the review process. We're probably only a week away from finalizing those. We had indicated there's a loan with CDA that is in process as well, and we're looking to close that in time for the closing in the second half of August. So hopefully with the aid of the county and your assistance, we can break ground during that time period. We're looking at roughly an 18 to 19-month construction period. So if we were able to break ground prior to Labor Day, we're looking at a spring of 19 start date, or occupancy date for the oncoming units, which is the spring, which is the perfect time for lease up. It'll give us a good 6 months of lease up activity before the loan becomes, with the county, becomes principal and interest on a monthly basis. From a cash flow standpoint, we've again we're looking to. There's only 187 units that are coming on board for residential. If we assume 15 units per month for an average lease up during a yearly period, on average, we'll do better in the summer, slower in the winter. But in a 12-month period, we would expect to be fully leased and fully occupied. At that point in time, once we're fully occupied, we'll look at permanently financing and taking out the party. So this loan could possibly be taken out early as soon as we stabilize this project. And again, it'll be based on where interest rates are and the financing market at that time. But obviously, since Mr. Stark is recourse on all three of these loans that we're looking to close, we're highly incentivized to place permanent financing on a non-recourse basis, which would be our target.
I would also add to Mr. Miller's question, even though these are not, these are market rate units, there won't be an affordable piece. We do have a community benefits agreement with the city of Cleveland that goes over and above the regular codified requirements, and will include both minority businesses and workforce hours throughout the construction period. We also have a requirements with the Port Authority as well as part of their capital lease structure that we have integrated into the financing that has inclusion requirements. So will be impactful in terms of community impact.
Questions? Mr. Miller? Have at it.
Yes. First, I want to just thank you for your interest and desire to do business in Cleveland. Currently, the downtown market is doing very well, and my question is, what impact do you think this project might have on retail activity in and around the project area?
Well, we have roughly 12,000 square feet of retail within the project. All of that retail, we basically have three tenants. We have Potbelly's, which is currently an existing tenant. We have Hex, which is a breakfast lunch shop that they're opening up a second location. I think everyone's aware of their longstanding restaurant that they have in Ohio City. And we also have a third casual restaurant that's going to be opening in that location that does lunch and dinner. And those are there to service basically the East 6 corridor is becoming a very residentially driven corridor with the Leader Building, the Garfield Building, and even across the street on Euclid. So the retail there is going to be servicing the people that live and work there on a daily basis. It's going to activate the streets more than that they currently are, and I believe this is the first new construction for apartment tower in the city, I think, in more than 30 years. And it's you know, we're excited about it. We're, you know, the architects have a clean slate of which to design these units. It's a ton of glass. There's some great views from all south, east, west, north. All of the different views from the site are not blocked. They're great views, and we're really excited about the success of the project and bringing it on board.
How many parking spaces, if any, will there be for the residents?
Well, the parking garage, I think, has 525 parking spaces in it currently, and we're only building 187 units. So the spaces will be available for the units, up as many as you know, they wish to, you know, subscribe to. I mean, there are many millennials that don't drive cars.
Yeah?
So the market will drive, you know, what percentage of the residents use the garage. But we know, just because Leader Building, Garfield Building don't have parking, you know, they're already approaching us currently about the lease of the parking spaces because there's so much in demand. So the parking, we're not concerned about using it, it's just a matter of allocation.
Okay.
Mr. Toomey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Sounds like an exciting project. I just wanted to get to it with respect to the jobs. You said, I think someone alluded about 92 permanent jobs. Of those 92, what are we looking at as far as full-time versus part-time jobs? And what type of jobs are we talking about? Is it service-oriented, or in addition to that, are there any other areas that we would be looking at as far as getting in the county?
So that's a combination of really the three uses. There'll be operational jobs that are actually created by the project that will be needed to maintain lease units, administrative, all just to be able to actually run that $80 million project. There'll also be jobs associated with parking operations, some of which are there now, some which will be new. And then certainly two of the three retail commercial spaces will create new jobs that are basically dark spaces there now that will be new. If you need an exact breakout, we could forward that to the department or the development team, and they could forward that on to you. But that's,
Yeah, I'd appreciate
and they're
that
all
if you get
FTEs. Just to clarify, those are full-time equivalent jobs.
Okay, great. And then as far as occupancy, you indicated that you believe it'll be fully leased and occupied within the year or timeframe, or is that accurate?
A year for all, right?
Yeah, actually, the retail will be fully leased before even the residential comes on board. All three of the retail spaces are under lease, and it's just a matter of build-out.
And has your marketing or study shown that there's a need for the rentals downtown now? We're getting enough people to
Yeah, every time we
demand
have
that?
the market studies updated, there's still a pent-up demand for new residential.
Okay, and then just as far as the work itself during the construction phase, you mentioned 600 construction jobs. Are these intend to be union type jobs, or what are we looking at as far as that goes, as far as the trades go?
We don't have the exact breakdown. Certainly many of the trades will be union, but it's not a 100% requirement of the project specifically. That's not attached to any of the financing or investment, but a large percentage would be union jobs.
Okay, and then I also want to make sure that we comply with all of our, I think you might have indicated that you do, with all of our requirements as far as diversity goes and those things to the fullest extent possible with the project. I think that's an important element that we need to keep pushing. So, okay, appreciate it. Look forward to having this nice project down there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Whoa, sorry.
One more,
I'm sorry.
just a
We start
couple
down there and we just kind of work.
follow-up. Are these, did I hear lease only? There's nothing to own?
Correct.
Nothing to own, all lease. Okay. And again, what's your target date for completion for the housing?
It's an 18 and 19-month construction period, so depending on when we start, if we were to start September 1st, we would look to be completed in March of 2019.
Okay. Do you currently own the parking garage? Is that secured
Correct.
and it's in your possession?
Correct.
Thank you.
The, I guess when I heard the financing package up front from the county, I didn't hear the Port Authority even mentioned. Then in your conversation, the Port Authority's name came up. So where do they fit in the stack?
So they're actually not a separate financing source. They're a vehicle that we use to actually issue bonds rather than a loan. And that's through their capital lease program that's very active. Many of the projects downtown utilize it. So it's not a separate source per se, rather a financing vehicle, and they act as a conduit for the money that comes in, and it's structured as bonds.
Okay, then refresh my knowledge. So how do we become third if I heard three banks, a Port Authority, and the Cleveland Development?
So
That's a lot of names for us to be three.
Understood. The banks take one shared first mortgage and they actually fund into one loan. So that's
Okay.
really the only mortgage from a construction lender
I
standpoint.
thought that.
Cleveland Development Advisors takes a second mortgage, and you would be a third mortgage. The Port Authority is simply a conduit. They don't take there's not a separate loan from them. The bank's loan is structured as a bond deal that the port issues. It's simply a conduit. There's no additional collateral or security for them outside of that bond structure.
So there will be bonds that are going to be sold in regards to this, in which the funding is coming through the three banks?
Correct. And they purchase the bonds, so there's not a third party that we have to raise money from or issue bonds to. And it's their capital lease program. As I mentioned, many of the large projects utilize it. It allows for sales tax exemption on the materials through the Port Authority, and it's the savings is beneficial for the construction contract.
Then you had to be part of the bond fund package then, I assume?
The Port Authority,
Port Authority bond fund?
they structure the construction debt comes in as those lenders purchase bonds from the Port Authority.
Okay, but I mean, the Port Authority has a couple different lending. They have one which is a pooled fund with bonds, and which you participate in that bond fund out there, in a separate, like they did with, the old Applied Materials, where they did a standalone transaction.
This is not a standalone credit enhanced bond fund deal. This is simply a conduit capital lease structure. So there's no credit enhancement from the Port Authority, no
Oh,
mortgage.
no. Okay, so
No.
you don't have to pay a fee for
There-
well, it's
their
a fee
credit
for-
enhancement? I would have thought that.
There are fees. It's not a credit enhancement through their common bond fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. The extent, 'cause I'm a little bit familiar with their bond fund on a personal side. The consideration for the 5 year on the county financing. And I heard that potentially you would be early retiring the debt from us. Under what conditions would that be? And are there any conditions where you'd want to come back to the county and ask for an extension beyond the 5 years?
Yeah, depending on where the financing markets are, we like to build in as much flexibility as we can based on, because we never know what the market conditions will be for financing purposes. As I mentioned earlier, we're always incentivized to, take out our recourse as early as possible and to convert to a non-recourse basis. But our anticipation is that once this project is stabilized, we would look to, place permanent financing on as soon as possible.
Sure, nobody likes to have their name on a personal guarantee if they can avoid it. Yeah, I understand. So it's more likely that you will be asking to accelerate. Is there a prepayment penalty or anything like that in regards to this package? I assume not.
No.
Okay, and are there any conditions whereby they could make a request to extend beyond the 5 years where our money would still be working?
Not that I'm, not that I'm aware of. I mean, that could
Well, let's hope we were aware of that.
No, right now, there's no provision. If they were to come back to request an extension, their request would have to go through our administrative and executive review, would have to go through the CCCIC again, because that's
Right.
who recommended this in the first place, and then it would also come back to this body.
For all intents and purposes, if we need to go beyond the 5 years, it would be a new loan for all intents and purposes. Okay, all right. So there's no automatic right to extend this on behalf of the borrower.
No, it is.
Okay, all right. And the other $17 million is coming from where? At least, I thought that,
That's the,
my math's correct.
That's the sponsor equity.
And so that's coming directly from your organization then?
Correct. The owners of the current owners of the project.
So some of that's going to be the equitable value of the parking garage, and is this all getting bundled together ultimately?
Yes.
When it's all said, the parking garage, the construction, the retail, those are not separate, there's no separate legal entity covering the retail, and no separate entity covering the rental, and it's not, sometimes it gets structured as different corporations.
We currently have a mortgage on both the existing structure, the retail
Sure.
and the garage. We're taking out that and we're placing it under a new construction loan that will include the residential. Now we have, since the parcels exist for the retail and the garages, they exist, we're keeping those parcels and we're adding an air rights parcel for the tower. So down the road, it is possible that we may do two separate refinancings, take out the residential and the retail and garage separately, but they would be done at the same time in order to retire the existing debt package.
But our secured package covers the entire 3 units you're getting combined, is that in case? We're not financing, for example, just the apartment building in the sweet spot of the automobile rental, I mean, the parking garage, which is always a great place to be. That's all part of what we're securing?
Correct, yes.
We have a secured position in
the
all 3?
Secured positions are, everyone is securing the entire building, including the garage
okay.
and
Good.
the retail.
Any questions based on the chair's questions?
One final.
Yes.
Just to get a scope of the massiveness of this building, we are going to build on the existing 7-story garage, and you're projecting another 19 floors on top of that 7? Is that, so what comparable is there to a building here in Cleveland that would have approximately 26 floors? Just to get an idea.
I think the best comparable would probably be the project next door, which is really right now the only high-rise, the 9.
Until nucleus?
Until nucleus, and hopefully many more, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the 9,
What is the 9? How many floors is that?
it's more than 20.
Yeah, I
mean,
think 24, 25.
24 or 5.
More than 9. Okay, wow, it's just one of probably the tallest buildings we have here in Cleveland, do you think, or is that fair to say?
For residential, correct.
For residential, but no, the
Residential,
yeah, I think that, I think the old, the PNC building, or the Key Bank is gonna be every bit as tall as that one. It's gonna be taller than that. I think, isn't it?
I'm sorry,
You
which
mean
building?
Key Tower?
Key Tower?
Key Tower is
Key Tower's
57
way
stories.
taller.
37, yeah, it's
Yeah.
twice the.
And don't forget that the new Hilton was 30, the bar's at 30, I know that because bar 32, I know.
right, right.
I know that one by heart, that part, yeah.
Wow, well, thank you, as Councilman Miller stated, for choosing our area and making that investment, and we look forward to seeing this building get built. Thank
Thank
you.
you. One last, if you would consider, we have a very tight closing timeframe. If you consider a passage under suspension, it would help us from a timing standpoint. Just put that out there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And what would happen if, in the event that would not take place at the council meeting? Is that,
Well, I mean, all the financing has to close together, so I can't speak, what that would mean in terms of delays, but certainly the rest of the 80-some million can't come together until your loan's in place.
yeah, and I can't speak to, we only have one meeting in August, in which we can recommend out of this committee, but that's always decided by the president as far as the agenda, how that goes together in that respect. But I just was curious as to what effect, if any, it would have on you. So Huntington Key, let's see, who else do we have in there?
First
The Port,
Commonwealth.
First, and Cleveland Development, they're all, everything, all their paperwork is 100% done at this point in time?
There's a lot of paperwork that's flying around, let's put it that way, and it's, the documents are very close. We delivered draft documents to your legal team in hopefully anticipation of an approval. So there's form documents out there for every one of these sources.
Okay. But unfortunately, each one's got their own lawyers on each side. They're trying to nick a provision out and add a provision back. So, well, good luck on getting that. Any other questions in regards to it? Okay, very good. Is there a motion to bring this out for full council approval? And there's been a request to make it under a second reading suspension.
So moved.
The chair will second it. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Good luck. We'll be looking forward to your project coming out of the ground. And even better luck on paying it early. We like that because then it can get our money working in other projects. Thanks. We have one other item, which is a carryover from the last meeting, which also involves the voting out of the economic development plan potentially. If you could read that into the record.
Resolution number 2017-0108, adopting the 2017 Economic Development Plan in accordance with Section 7.05 of the County Charter and Section 801.01 of the County Code.
And we actually held this over from the last meeting. So, Mr. Carter, we had made some requests at the last meeting. If you can bring us up to speed as to where we are in regards to that. I know we did receive an email, and one of our members who on the council who was attending last meeting was Mr. Miller, had made some requests also. So if you can give us a status update. He did not get that email, in all fairness, until just before this meeting started, so he hasn't had a chance to dig into it.
Yep. Ted Carter, Chief Economic Development.
It sounds like you're off on the recording side.
With your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll just read my email for the benefit of Mr. Miller, so this kind of covers
Sure,
all
that'd
the
be fine.
items. And Mr. Chairman, Cuyahoga Council Economic Development Committee, in response to your questions regarding the economic development loan portfolio, you had 3 questions and 1 separate request regarding the 5-year economic development 5-year plan. Question 1, provide a list of all loans that have personal guarantees. We are still compiling this information, but I provided a summary overview of the loan portfolio based on the Economic Development Improvement Team review. Currently, we do not have the information compiled at the moment. We will get that to you. Number 2, you asked for a list of problem loans from 2007 to 2017 in different tranches by year. We're still completing our review and are finalizing that information and should be able to provide that information in the near future. For the request 1 and 2, there's a document that looks, that is a summary document, which gives you a high-level overview of the loans. It looks like this. So it'll give you the total number of loans with it broken out by segment, and then the number of delinquencies, and then the number of loans during the Budish administration. And this was a document that was provided to the plain dealer. So the 2 questions that you asked go into the next level of detail. So we're continuing to do our review and assessment of these loans in terms of validation. So we'll be able to provide that to you in the near future. The third request pertinent to the loan portfolio, the committee asked for a list of loans to companies/people that were associated with the corruption scandal. We will work with the IG to provide this information. He has provided a list which we need of companies. He has provided a list of individuals and companies that were associated with the corruption scandal. Our team needs to cross-tab that with our list of loans, and we will get that to you in the near future. On June 29th, we concurred with the IG's office that the current loan portfolio is comprised of 242 loans approved between 2007 and 2017. In terms of loans prior to 2007, it is believed that we have 55 loans approved from 1999 to 2006 that are still open. The attached loan summary document reflects what we know at this time. So this document was compiled by our Economic Development Improvement Team, which is a cross-section of professionals from across the county, led by Heather Reffert, who is the Director of Consulting and has been leading this effort. We have collected and digitized loan documentation from various files and locations. The Economic Development Improvement Team is currently working with development to identify and review documentation with each loan and derive a loan status. The detailed data on the loan portfolio will be available when we provide this and other information that you requested sometime in September or earlier. We will also provide at that time the answer to your request to identify loans that may have been associated with those involved in the corruption scandal. I hope that you find this response helpful, and we'll be happy to visit further and go into more detail to respond to any questions that you or your committee might have. So those were the 3 questions regarding the loan portfolio. The separate request was for kind of specific goals and outcomes within the next year related to the 5-year plan. That is reflected in this grid matrix. So, as I've described in earlier hearings, the plan really reflects an approach where we are working with our strategic partners from across the county to achieve the different objectives outlined in the plan. This document specifically points to those items which the county has the lead or is a specific owner of. So it shows actions and activities and results from 2016 and 2017. The far right column reflects actions in 2017 and 2018. I think those were the 4 items that this committee requested an update on.
Okay, why don't we go handle them in the reverse sequence? Ms. Baker, you were, unfortunately, I wish you could have been here, but I know you had other commitments at the last meeting. But you indicated, I think you watched the, with bated breath every moment of the last committee meeting, I'm sure.
Yes.
So, yeah, so if you have questions in regards to the plan itself, we'll come back to the loan portfolio afterwards, because I don't see them necessarily as being connected, even though they touch each other. So any questions in regards to the plan update, and you not having been here? Yes.
Okay. Well, I did review the entire, so that was interesting and good job in many of the questions that were asked. Much of the meeting seemed to center around the outstanding loans and things, so that was a big part of that. But outside of that, in your presentation that you gave at the top of the meeting, I guess a few things out of that, I had some questions. You said the number 1 goal, I believe, was economic innovation. Is that what you called it? Let me get my notes. Number 1.
I think
Workforce innovation is what you said was your number 1 goal for, if you were to say what your target time is spent. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Rereading my testimony.
Yes.
I was referring to a number of the accomplishments our office has had over the last year, and certainly workforce innovation. Getting that stood up, I would count as our number 1 achievement, and particularly that we are now building our office around workforce. And so we have these 3 verticals. Workforce is a new vertical, so that didn't exist when I arrived. We've stood that up, hired a director, and now building out our Skill Up program. Then the economic development and community development and housing verticals complement that. But our core, where we believe we can really move the needle in this county, and that's been reflected in marketplace conversations as well as national debate, is aligning the workforce system and really making an impact there.
I would really agree with that. And I think that the other challenges that we have when you talk about housing and you talk about just growth for the county and trying to build population and all those issues that we want to also hope, I think that will be the fallout of what happens when you have a skilled workforce and jobs or companies want to either expand or come here because they know we have a skilled, and then they will buy that housing, and all of that I think is a result. So I guess I would ask, in listening to your testimony, that we really do try to focus on the workforce innovations and skill up type of initiatives, because I think that will drive, without us even trying, that will drive the other things that we know are challenges to us in the county. Do you see it that way?
Once again, Ms. Baker, I agree with your thesis.
Okay, good.
And I would say that, just to correlate to this presentation we just had. So I was recently, as I shared last week, so I've been visiting our neighboring counties. So Lake County made a point of letting Mr. Kraus and I know that they are focused on creating a mousetrap to lure residents from this county to Lake County. And so, you know, he tried to diminish it once he made the comment. I think he said it by mistake. But this project, you know, we need more housing downtown. And so strategically, what we hope will happen, millennials will come downtown, they'll get into their 30s, get married, have kids, and then we need to have that modernized housing product in the inner ring and outer ring suburbs that will be attractive to these. So there's just a slow movement. Hopefully they won't go any further than the county line. But just the fact that the economic development leads say, hey, part of our strategy is to build quality housing on your border. And we believe that because they said, well, why are we losing population from your standpoint? And their belief was that it was driven by quality of schools. So whether that's true or not, I think Mr. Kraus had a different kind of, but anyway, the point is that it is important to have product that millennials will find attractive, where we can then go to other markets, show the cost differential between a unit in New York City, Los Angeles, and Cleveland.
Right. Good, I like all that. I guess I just wanted to drive home the point that it's all about jobs.
Yeah.
It's all about getting people to work, and workforce skills is certainly a big part of that, because it seems that we lack, on top of the other perhaps challenges of opiate
Yep.
and drug addiction and qualifying for passing drug tests and things like that. It's all part of the pot, but
Yep.
really is about driving jobs.
Agreed.
There was a part of your presentation too that I thought was interesting, the connection with NASA. Served on the NASA committee back at the State House, and they are trying to find ways to get into the business community to be relevant for their R&D. And it sounds like you have also captured that interest. Is that something you think will be fruitful?
I hope so. I would say, you know, part of my role here is to be looking over the horizon. And so we went to go visit NASA, I guess about a year ago. And during that presentation, you know, they walked through their SBIR program, which is kind of the cutting edge research and commercialization that they are trying to associate with NASA. But so we've done a couple of follow-up meetings, one with the city and NASA about, and this last call last week was, how do we proactively engage those companies, ascertain their growth and which one NASA thinks are viable, and encourage them to stay here in Cuyahoga County. The NASA person went a step further, said, you know, we will get you the SBIR list for other federal agencies around the country, and then, you know, you can proactively call those companies and maybe lure them. So that takes a little more research and analytics that we would do. But the starting point is the Cuyahoga-based counties, of which there are about 30 of them in different stages. So there's stage 1 and stage 2. We've even begun thinking about, you know, and I've talked to Jumpstart about this. They weren't aware of this program. And so they see it as a potential investment with companies that they could invest in, you know, because they've gone through this rigorous due diligence in the first 2 stages, but they need that next slug of capital to commercialize and then really take off. And so those are the conversations we're having.
The Ohio Aerosmith Institute is really a
Yes,
kind of a gem that I don't believe, utilize enough.
Yeah.
And that would be a great place to.
So they've been involved in these conversations. They hosted the call. They've also been talking to us about further county support. So we gave them some seed capital, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, maybe it was 4 years ago now. But so we will evaluate that as part of our budget request, and in the context of really finding leverage points that could really, you know, because those are the kind of companies that are going to hire a lot of people if they take off, and, you know, it reinforces the brand of being an innovation hub here in the Midwest. And, you know, this is a crown jewel, NASA, so that's why we reflected in our plan. We don't believe that it's utilized enough, and I think the city is now saying, yeah, you're right, we need to, part of it's in Cleveland, most of it's in Brook Park, and so these meetings are starting to really provide some substance. So I'm very hopeful that a year from now, with some hard work and really driving, we'll have something substantive to report out on that.
They also, through the OAI, have a number of students that, if you're talking about education and trying to gear that whole technology piece.
STEM, yep.
Yeah, the STEM piece, that's a great place to kind of foster it.
Yep.
The other place was, I just wanted to reiterate my concern with the sustainability piece. I agree with Councilman Miller in that video that I watched, that it's an important piece and it's an up-and-coming field that we can certainly take advantage of. But I do want to make sure that we always think about the return on investment, that even though the outcome may be an outcome that we find our objectives to be, we still need to think about the investment of what it took to get there. And I would just ask that whenever we see a renewables and things like that along that line, that we always think about what it costs to get there and how we're going to pay for it. The Global Healthcare Innovation Center, are you part of any of that in trying to build those tenants, and is that on your
I
radar?
will say it's tangentially, because of my real estate background, I've had some conversations with SMG and Mr. Hillo. He has also been heavily involved in our economic development improvement team because he has an accounting background. He's asked my thoughts on that from time to time. One of the things I didn't mention last week, so I'm glad you mentioned this. One of our results from last year, the executive and I went out to Silicon Valley last year to talk about Silicon Valley alignment here in Cleveland, and he actually spoke at the Civic Technology and Innovation Conference, Meeting of the Minds.
I heard you say that.
So that, as a result of his speech and our work there, Meeting of the Minds will be hosted here at the Innovation
Great.
Center and Convention Center. And the purpose of that is really brand awareness, but hopefully we can get some companies, they see the cool things and,
Right.
As a very ambitious goal, become tenants or have some alignment. But we're always, of the two projects that we presented to this committee this year, Seven Signal and Sterigenics, actually it was last year, we always encourage the companies to consider that location. For Sterigenics, I really thought that we had them on the hook because it's a healthcare company, it's Class A office space, has a feeling of a headquarters. But they had, for various reasons, they were down the road with Broadview Heights. But, that's one of the executive's top priorities is to get that leased up. So
Yes.
anything that we can do from we're going to do that.
It's on your radar.
Yes.
One last question for now, and you're talking about the Board of Control allowed, and I'm searching my memory, I believe it was an additional $75,000, am I right? That for the continuation of E and Y to do,
Yes.
it was 75. And at the time, am I wrong, right?
Okay, it was more than 150,000.
Oh, it was 150, okay. We asked for a monthly white paper, simple outline, and, so far we've gotten much more than that. Here we are with a 5-year plan, but hopefully in September, October, November, December, when things quiet down, we will be given, is that on your radar too?
It is. It slipped a couple of weeks, to be honest with you, Councilwoman. We were supposed to have a call last week, and it got pushed due to my schedule. So we'll reschedule that call, and that was to provide an update along the lines of what we committed to.
Right, nothing intense, just this is what we're doing. We haven't
Yep.
talked to you in a while. Here's our update.
Yeah.
That's how things are going. That's all for now, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions of the 5-year plan? We're not getting into the financing loan. We'll come back to that. So we'll treat those as two separate topics. Anything from what was presented? Anybody? Mr. Miller?
So, Mr. Chairman, you're dealing with the loan
No.
part later?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that
Okay, I have
let's
some.
plan and
Okay,
feedback.
on the plan, first of all, to follow up on what Ms. Baker said about NASA, I would also bring to everybody's attention the Aerozone Alliance as an asset. It's mentioned in the document, and I know that they recently engaged Cleveland State University for a low-cost consultation and successfully came up with an organizational plan as to how this ongoing organization could be structured so they're continuing to make progress. My next question is whether you are recommending any amendments to the 5-year plan as originally submitted.
Not at this time, Councilman.
And my second question is what you would think about attaching this this document that that projects the key activities for the next year as an attachment to the plan to indicate what our intentions are for the coming year.
Councilman, I'd be very open to that, with one caveat. Because the executive has been out of the country on vacation, I'd like to just share this with him before we do that formally. But a lot of these things I've talked with him about, and so I just would want to give him the courtesy of at least seeing this before we did that.
Okay, I would put that as a suggestion to the committee. I'm not a member, so I can't offer any amendments, but I have no other questions on the plan at this time.
Okay. Well, why don't we proceed with the expectation that somebody from your shop, because if we vote this out today, it'll be on Tuesday's meeting agenda, that between now and Tuesday, you will have cleared it with the county executive. I don't know that, an appendix never changes the core document. It just becomes something that you follow along as what the intent is.
Yep.
And so I see no reason that an appendix.
I mean, I just want to make sure,
I
again,
understand.
as a
Yeah,
courtesy.
you
And
have a
Mr.
boss and
Hurdick
you
will
got-
follow up on that, because I'll be on vacation the latter part of this week, so he'll make sure that
Okay.
gets done, but it doesn't happen before I leave.
Will the county executive be back by the end of the week?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we'll make sure that your shop at least gets it read so that we can get that amendment attached for public record. It has to be 24 hours out. So we'll put the burden on your shop you put the burden on your shop within to make sure that we've got, get an amendment drafted and ready to go by what, Friday noon? Okay, there we go. My only question in regards to the plan itself, I know the workforce, as you talk with Mrs. Baker on that, is a high priority, one of the most important things. My concern is always when people try to do too many things within a sector. We have bodies within this community that are poised to do good things in regards to sectors already, with Tri-C and their hospitality and where they're going, and Destination Cleveland with their hospitality component for the hotels and restaurants and all those things. I would highly encourage that the county did not take the lead on that, as opposed to using the bodies already here.
Agreed.
Only having some involvement with manufacturing. I know that you already have a body in town, that Magnet is clearly been a organization that's been favored by the Cleveland Foundation and Fund for Economic Future, and being the driver on that. So again, I would highly suggest around workforce that Magnet be looked upon. I wish we had a medical community that was similar to Magnet and similar to Destination Cleveland around the medical, but I think that they don't play quite as nice in the sandbox. Those four organizations that are out there, it'd be nice if there was one that was driving that factor. But my suggestion is, rather than the county trying to play lead on all those things, find some folks that may be already in town that we play a supporting role to them out there.
We agree with that, Mr. Chairman, and I believe that the entire document reflects your philosophy there. So again, this document here that we handed out today really just shows where the county has a specific role that it owns or has a primary leadership role. But the majority of the entire plan is really reflected around a spirit of collaboration and partnership.
Okay, well,
So Destination Cleveland, for example, we give financial support. And so Mr. Gilbert and I meet periodically to talk about the Magnet. You know, we've had conversations there, and when you look at the manufacturing strategy, we specifically call out Magnet. So the Skill Up program is working and engaged with Magnet, as is Tri-C.
right.
So a lot of these things that you've identified, partnerships exist, and I'm pretty comfortable with the strength of them, to be honest with you.
Good, but I think it's really important to say we as a community, instead of, if you look on the definitions of workforce, you look on the definition of economic development, you're gonna find it in probably about 600 organizations. Somebody needs to step up and own a couple of those ones, and we need to be supportive as opposed to being the owners of some of those things, I think would be
agreed,
a great place
100%.
for us to be. Because the chair does not see the loan portfolio questions, which we've asked, that's a little bit of on a tangent, as affecting the 5-year plan. It's a component of it. Unless I hear any objection, I would like to vote the 5-year plan out at this point and then come back to the loan. If somebody feels as though they are so joined at the hip that they have to be voted out as one package, I don't, because you're not gonna be ready to present the loan stuff today anyway. It's gonna be a follow-on, and I would rather not hold the 5-year plan, so we could get it before the next council meeting. Does anybody have any objection if we were to vote the 5-year plan out and then come back to the loan? Okay, seeing none whatsoever, the chair will move for moving the 5-year plan out with a second reading. I think that would be a second reading suspension at the 5-year plan at the next meeting. Is there a second on that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, and Mr. Miller, even though you're not a member of the committee, I'd welcome your discussion if you have any objection to that.
Oh, no, I'm on board.
Okay, all right. All in favor of moving the 5-year plan out for reading before the second reading suspension at the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now let's
Thank you,
move to the
Mr. Chairman,
loan.
committee members.
Again, now let's move into the loan questions that we have. Does anybody have any? It's the expectation, based on what I think I heard, that this detailed information that we asked for and Mr. Miller asked for as a guest on the committee will not be ready until sometime into September. Is that?
September, yes.
Okay, so I can't guarantee we're gonna have a committee item added specifically out of council that would not automatically set that. If we do not have one, we will set our committee meeting just around this subject matter, just around loan. And when we do that, I would expect all these things to be answered by that point in time.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
So, if, I don't think, is there anything that we anticipate that that you folks are being brought forward at tomorrow night's meeting that we would cause for
No,
a committee meeting?
515 is the dangling Chad. I'm trying to think of anything else that ABB and Highland SBOC. Nothing that comes to mind at the moment.
All right,
That's within
so
that time frame.
If there's nothing gonna come out, then the next meeting would be the first weekend, the second Tuesday in September, which would mean that our meeting would follow that, it might be the third Monday in September, so let's target that as our due date.
Okay. Third Monday, what date is that, Mr. Chairman?
I have to.
18th.
The 18th, okay.
18th. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
okay, we'll
Sounds good.
target
Thank
that.
you.
So let's go, if anybody has any quick questions on what we heard in regards to the loan, let's go through that committee first, no. Ms. Baker? Ms. Baker?
Well, and I'm going by, what I heard. I don't want to repeat perhaps what you've already been told. The 242 outstanding loans, that seems to be the number that has been agreed upon.
Plus the 55, the predate 2007 to 1999 to 2007.
That's in addition to that. I didn't
correct.
realize that.
Yes.
Okay, so
At least I think they're two separate numbers, right?
That's correct. 297 is the
297.
total. Ms. Baker, do you have this sheet that I held up?
Is it the long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Carter saying that the committee has. it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what you should work
Okay.
from.
I don't think there's really a whole lot to ask now if the answers aren't really, from what I heard, we had 100% knowledge of all loans at the time of the last meeting.
I
But,
think that was limited to the 242. I think that we're,
Yeah, well, I think what I said, just to be specific on the record, Mr. Schron asked me, do we have all of the documents for these
Right.
loans? And I said, we at least have a document
Something.
that confirms the loan, but all of the paperwork may not in fact be there. So that is ongoing work that the edit team is doing, is to
Right.
go back and revalidate all the documentation.
is that part of the E&Y work?
They are assisting, but this is largely being driven, this effort, by county staff. So where there's a loan that maybe exceeds the capabilities or knowledge of my team or the edit team, we have the E&Y take a look at those loans. And so we're really trying to, one, because every time we use them, there's an hourly charge, but two, start to build the capacity internal to my team in the county to do that. And so there's members of my team, Ms. Jackson, in fact, has really played an instrumental role the last couple of weeks of helping shepherd our team, and because she's not in the economic development day-to-day, but has a finance background and certification, she stepped in and really provided some additional capacity. So that work is ongoing, and so we have an update brief for the executive when he returns, and then we'll continue the work of doing the additional things that this committee has requested so we can meet that September 18th date.
And you fully expect that the mid-September, those questions can be answered with materials that you have that are kind of weak now?
Yeah, let me turn and ask Ms. Reffert, who is the quarterback of this, so I don't speak out of school, to just come up and address that question directly.
Hello, I'm Heather Reffett. I'm the Director of Consulting for the Innovation and Performance Team within the Office of the County Executive.
For who? Why do you work for the county?
I work for the county.
Sorry about that. I just, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that September 18th is a sufficient deadline.
Sufficient deadline, just so, because we won't see you again till then, for how many are current loans, how many are paid, how many during the corruption scandal, how many since 2007 have investigated, the David Douglas and Associates investigating 88 loans. All of that will be, for the most part, asked and answered?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. A lot of work.
And I have
I'm
provided
hoping to
to
work, a lot of it's already been done, so.
that last question, Ms. Baker.
Yes.
Is this sheet here that Ms. Cardis handed out right before the committee meeting started, gives you an overview from
Yeah, I see
David
that.
Douglas of the status of the loans. The back of the sheet has their definitions for what we call their cured means, appear collectible, et cetera. So that's 88 that we sent several months ago, and then there's been some follow-up loans, number of loans, which equates to this 118 that you see on that overview document. So as we continue to do this review, we're
Right.
sending loans forward to Mr. Douglas. I am now meeting with borrowers, so a couple of loans. I personally met with the heads of those companies to really understand why the loan was requested, what the current payment intentions are, et cetera. And so those have been very insightful and been very helpful to me to have those conversations. And I think that the borrowers appreciate the county's outreach. Some of these were companies that were listed in the paper, and there's some discrepancy about what they owe, what we build, et cetera. And so those meetings have been excellent.
The number that jumps out on this paper, the new product of 57 placed, but 22 closed, that's a pretty significant number on, you don't see any double-digit numbers except for North Coast at 11. Is there any explanation behind that?
At a high level, so the two companies I've met with were in that category. This was a program that was intended to be high risk, and so I talked to Mr. Miller, asked me last week about my confidence level. The structure of those loans, there was forgiveness or some type of exit for the company to pay back the loan embedded in the way the loan was structured. So that's probably why either they met one of the requirements, and so that's my guess of why that number is like that. But that was a program that was just intended to be risky and was done in conjunction with Magnet or Jumpstart, and so.
Is
I'm
that
sorry,
part
that's
of
North
the
Coast.
overview that we would be seeing then in September, that would be given more detailed explanation of things like that?
Yes, we could do that. Yeah.
Just, yeah, okay. Good, thank you.
Mr. Joe?
Mr.
Any
Chair.
questions? No, you don't have to have, I just.
No, just to clarify then, so the September 18th date, we'll get an overview on all this, update on everything where we're at on these.
We'll be done with
I just wanna-
overview. You should be able to pull any of the 297 files and say, I want to see file number 143,
Okay,
out of the blue.
okay. Including, and this is to Mr. Carter, I suppose, including the three past due from 2015 to present, that will be part of that package as well?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm curious about that more recent situation too, knowing of, now since we have this issue, so how that happened. So we'll definitely want some answers on that. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, I just want to make sure we have the whole universe. Are there any open loans that are older than 1999?
Ms. Redford remains there.
Not to our knowledge. We spent about 3 days behind closed doors with the AG's office going over every loan that they had, every loan that we knew about. And this is what we arrived at. Now as we go through and look at each loan and determining the loan status, we'll be able to actually give you really concrete numbers. This is our understanding that we're at 242 in terms of the last 10 years and 55 that are older that are still open. I know that the IG, and I don't want to speak too much on their behalf, they're trying to document every single loan the county has ever given, even if it goes back to 1998 and is terminated and closed, they are still going through everything. And so we communicate with them regularly. If they identify another loan, I'm certain that they will share it with us, but we met with them as early as last Tuesday, and we were still at the same number of 242 and 55.
Okay. And how much is the total amount of loan repayments owed that are in arrears, and how much of that do we think might be collectible?
I don't have that number available to me, but that's something that we can give to you reasonably soon because it's already listed. Those are the loans with Douglas and Associates.
Yeah, I would just say, yes, as a general matter, Mr. Miller, that with the experience of David Douglas so far is that this process has yielded not a significant amount of money. So the 88 that has gone through different processes has collected something like it's under $300,000 so far. So if you were to extrapolate that, it's not going to be millions of dollars, I don't think. But the two companies that I've met with, and they intend to repay their loans. One was current, have made payments, but there was a discrepancy in our record keeping. So part of this engagement just forces people to say, you know what, I owe it. The county's not going to forget about it, and so we're going to get some benefit from that. But we'll be able to give you more detailed information on that question in September.
And final question. Without expecting any unusually positive collection results, if the people that we think are going to make their regular payments just make their regular payments, what's the total amount of loan repayment expected in over the next year? What's the annual repayment?
We are over $1 million a year in repayments, and that number, I'm told, has gone up steadily over the last couple of years. This year will spike because of the large repayment that we will receive from Jumpstart. So now it's going to be significantly higher, and I've confirmed with the Office of Budget, so it's about $1 million a year in terms of
Fine.
recapture from our loan portfolio.
Okay, thanks.
Another question came up?
Yeah, just in terms of that September 18th meeting, at that time, I think it would be beneficial for the committee here to hear what steps have been put in place since we had our initial discussions about this to ensure that we don't have any issues moving forward, and that we have an efficient and cost-effective way of doing this as we move forward for the county. So we want to see concrete information on that when we meet. Thank you.
You and I are thinking on the same plane. I wanted to get the information and then
What the corrective actions are going to be going forward, okay? Some questions from the chair. If we get to September 18th and we've got all the loans identified, will we have sat down with the borrowers and making sure that they are in complete agreement with what we are saying that is owed and what the payment schedule looks like and the interest rates, so that on any of these loans we should pick out of the 297, will we have already contacted the borrower to make sure we show you owing us $100,000? Oh, gee, I thought I fully paid you, or gee whiz, I'm glad they only think 100,000 because I thought we owed them 200. So will we have sat down and done any reconciliation with the borrower?
No, that, in my mind, is ongoing work, so we've got to first get our data right, which is what
Okay,
the edit
that's
team has
fine.
done. So on a selective basis, we've cherry-picked some loans where we've done that, so the two companies I just talked about, and then that needs to be an ongoing process through the balance of the year.
Got no problem. Once we identify the 297, then we'll go back to the vendor or the borrowers and make sure that they are in complete agreement as to what we think that loan should be looking like at this point in time. My expectation, as I indicated to Mr. Tuma, is that any of those 197 be prepared on the 18th of September that we might ask a question about. So that's because that means that you have the records to support it. And I'm not trying to play gotcha, just trying to say, if we truly have 100%, then that means that all the 297 should be supportable and then if we find that that's not supportable in the point where we can actually collect the money, know what it is, if the borrower, if you walk up to the borrower and say, you owe us $100,000, we should be able to support that. I think you also probably picked up today as to how important it is to this committee when we ask questions about personal guarantee, why we asked that last week in the meeting, because that was a very specific question we asked of the borrower today. And you could hear the response from the borrower. They're going to try and pay us off as quick as they can because they want to get off of that exposure of the personal guarantee, which, having done that before in my life, and anybody else who's been in business, you know that that's the number one priority for you when you ever borrow money, is to get off of that personal guarantee as quick as possible so that your wife can stop asking you questions about is our house still at risk and things of that nature on any borrowing out there. So
To that point, Mr. Chairman, certainly during the executive's administration, the practice has been to ask for more security, certainly since I've been here, but now it is an explicit policy in our new policy manual that corporate or personal guarantee is a requirement of any loans that are put forward. So that's why we're going back. So you asked the question as it related to our entire portfolio of 297 loans. So we haven't gone back through all those loans to answer your question, but that we will get to you when we.
yeah, and I don't expect there's going to be a personal guarantee in every one of them. As a matter of fact,
Well, we know
a
the North Coast
solid
opportunity.
business should never be giving you a personal guarantee, from my own point of view, because if they're solid enough that their finances can support it, then their corporate guarantee should be more than satisfactory to ask out there. So I'm not advocating that. I just wanted you to see very clearly why it's important. If somebody's going to say they're going to do that, that might have been enough to get all those banks to commit to saying, all right, if you're willing to put that forth for risk, then we're willing to loan you money on that out there. Getting to the third one, which was the corruption aspect of it. When I read the IG's comments back to your office, it said that they are not actually doing that function. And we thought perhaps the IG maybe had a file of all those folks who were under the corruption, who maybe borrowed money or their name would show up. I got the impression when I read the IG's response that they had not done that. Occasionally they had a few of the names, but that was not part of their charge.
Right, he sent us a list. I don't know if that was from the newspaper, so we'll just run down that, cross-tab it to our list, and then we'll be able to give you a high level. And then we'll talk with him more about, is there a more specific way we could,
Well, I
answer
mean,
that
it should
question.
be pretty easy. We know at least 68 names that those folks are staying someplace else. So we know those names. So let's cross-tab all those out there. Let's cross-tab the FBI file and say, okay, out there, because we saw some of the businesses. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the corruption takes place, because there's so many dollars that move around construction projects. That's where things can get fuzzy pretty quickly out there. And unfortunately, if you check the records out of that corruption scandal, it was a lot of construction type projects. And so we want to make sure that we've got a clean bill of health out there. I think that there was also a comment in the IG's file that made a comment about the corruption and said that they were tracking what the former county commissioners had done as to how loans got processed. And they got processed at a lower dollar amount with a wink, saying, hey, just add a few more bucks later on as the project goes forward, and we'll open it up. It was actually a compliment to the Public Works side of the aisle that under our current side, that I think was it 70% of our loans are now coming in below the estimate,
Yeah, I
below
saw that.
target.
Great
All
news.
good stuff
Great news.
out there, as opposed to the old way, which was that it came in at 70% of the rate, and they got jacked up under the after the fact. But that's why that corruption got processed. So if you reading the IG's comments, it was that the testimony itself from the corruption scandal was where it became pretty glaring as to what happened during that tenure. Any other questions in regards to the chairs?
One more.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Director, can you tell me what our total amount of loans outstanding is, considering only good loans that we think are probably going to be collected on?
You asked me, Mr. Miller, a variant of this question last week, and I think when you mean good loans, you mean those that are performing or that are current.
I'm talking about, I mean, even if somebody's a month behind on their payments or whatever, I'm talking the total amount that's outstanding on loans that we think are basically good loans that we think are going to be collectible at the end of the day.
Okay, I don't have that number with me, but we'll work to provide that on the 18th as well.
Okay, thank you.
Well, then getting to Mr. Miller's question, why don't we do an aging on it? So just give us the aging date that says that they're 90 days, 120 days, so we know the aging as far as what that is. That should be pretty easy to do, which is done in every loan that I've ever seen. If somebody's moved behind, are they 60 days late, are they 90 days late, 120? That starts to get to the quality of whether or not we think we're gonna get paid. So with that,
One last,
yes, ma'am.
from my viewing of the last committee, there was mention of and I know it was mentioned again today, about Jumpstart and $3 million that is repayment. Can you, just for my sake, because you probably already discussed it, from what I understood, it was over $3 million is the expectation of what we think we're going to be getting from Jumpstart?
Yes.
And just tell me how that is driven. How
It
did
was
we come to that?
driven by there was a provision where if there was a exit event, so the entire package was over $3 million, and so it was provided as a loan to Jumpstart.
Okay,
So one component was, once they had an event from one of their companies, that we would be able to have our principal repaid plus interest. There's also a provision for a success fee, which is, without going into the details of that. And so this repayment is because they had a company they invested in. It actually was prior to the county's investment, but the lawyers did a great job of writing this so that we could latch onto that. And Mr. Leach really said, in the spirit of this, you know, your capital was key to our success at that moment in time. We're going to honor the spirit, but they didn't technically have to. So we're going to, in fact, the wire's in transit. So we will get that money repaid, and then we'll have some kind of residual interest that in Jumpstart for ongoing. And so that's still being worked out with the lawyers, what that looks like.
was that, if I can just ask, was that a find on our end saying, hey, there's $3 million out there that we probably should put our name on? Or is that Mr. Leach that just
Mr. Leach
voluntarily?
stepped forward. I mean, we knew that the company was going to be bought. He disclosed that to us earlier this year.
Okay.
And has expressed an interest in, to the executive and to me about how that money could be repositioned. So I've got some thoughts on that I've got to talk to the executive about. We've talked with Mr. Leach also about stuff like NASA and other things that we could be doing with Jumpstart around innovation and entrepreneurship in the community, which I hope I can find a time once I get off this loan to talk with him about and see how we can bring that to. But you know, he disclosed it and said, we think this is going to happen as a strong possibility.
Well, we
So-
want to continue, however they wrote it then,
Yeah.
that compelled him to come forward. Let's continue writing him that way.
And as you've heard the executive, or you've probably read, you know, the executive really likes this third-party model. And so part of our ongoing correction is to really make sure that we have the staff and resources to do the right oversight of our third-party entities, ECDI, NDC, through the Grow Cuyahoga Fund, our SBA program, our program with the Urban League. And so,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, that all takes maintenance.
Well,
Thank you, Chair.
The chair will at least take some recognition of the fact that during the testimony with Mr. Leach, when he was looking for those loans last year, that we were going to be part of that. And I was aware that they had an event that was coming due. I was aware that they were going to have a significant payout from that event. And we actually had Mr. Leach on, when he was testifying, saying that when asked if you would have that event, would you repay this loan? He said, yes, he would at that point in time. So the commitment was from that microphone in front of us. And so if I recall how that went, that where the strong suggestion was you're having an event within your firm, and that's what they refer to those things in investment banking, if you have an event. And so his event was a sale in which they made a considerable amount of money, and we said we'd like to have our money working. He needed his money, he needed our money for in anticipation of a program. And so we fortunately got him at a moment in which he said yes, he would, if that event turned to be successful, which you never know if they are. And well, yeah, the likelihood is that unless you have like a Jump Start or somebody like that, where we're investing in, they're not going to be having an event. If, for example, today that the money to go into that apartment building, they don't have, quote, events that result in that. They just have a refinancing package. And so the commitment was today is that if they get refinanced within less than 5 years, they want to get it off the down, not because of financially it's attractive, which it was for Jumpstart. In this particular case, it was financially, it will be financially attractive, but it's more importantly, it'll get the personal guarantee off there. So we did ask for that from Jumpstart at the very, when he was up here testifying as to why he wanted to be part of that program. And he made the commitment that if the event took place, that he would repay us. So I'm thrilled about that.
Yeah, no, that I would say for this region is a significant occurrence. It was $1 billion acquisition. It was a global healthcare device company, I believe, that bought, they may not be a healthcare device, I may be confusing, but bought a local company here. So now this global healthcare company has a presence in Cuyahoga County, and we got repaid, and it's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. Any other questions? Hearing none, is there anybody that on the agenda for non-agenda items?
No, Mr. Chair, no one assigned
Okay.
to.
Seeing how they are, we adjourn the meeting. We'll see you on the 18th. Thanks. Have a great trip.